Hey guys, welcome back to another video from Let's DevOps. In today's video, we are going to look into an important, interesting feature of Jenkins, which I would recommend most of the people who are using Jenkins to start using it. And if you're wondering what it is the shared libraries feature of Jenkins. If this is something interesting, then let's get started. So what's the shared library feature in Jenkins? We know that the Jenkins file is the pipeline as a code. So whatever you want to define in the Jenkins pipeline to do is pretty much written in the Jenkins file. And this file at some point could become too big, too huge to handle. For example, if you're talking about a CI with 10, 12 stages, then the number of lines of code sitting in the Jenkins file could be huge. Just to give you an example, um, I have my CI pipeline, something like this. And if you see, it's still not complete pipeline, but if you see, there are already loads of stages that I have. Now, if I pick up the Jenkins file for this setup, then I'm talking about how many lines of code. If I get into my GitHub and let me quickly pull out this repository, cd ci. So this is the repository. And if I look into the Jenkins file, I am talking about close to 200 lines of code. Now keep in mind that this is not the production code. If I have to implement this CI setup for my company or in a production setup, then I'm talking about close to 500, 600 lines of code because I'm going to do a lot more stuff, a lot of try catch, logging, error management, um, multiple checks, and so on. But since this is just a demo, I'm keeping it pretty straightforward. And even for that, we are talking about 200 lines of code. Now, that is going to become a headache when we are going to manage multiple Jenkins files for multiple projects and managing 500, 600 lines of code for different Jenkins files. To reduce the overhead and to reuse the functions that we build for one project across multiple projects, Jenkins comes up with this feature called shared library concept. So basically, let's consider a repository for pipeline libraries. All the scripts, all the functions that you want to use across different projects can be put into a dedicated repository in itself. So let's say pipeline libs. Let's name it pipeline libs. And the structure is pretty simple. You have resources, source, and vars. The vars folder is the one that is very important. You can still leverage the SRC and the resources for different other use cases. For example, if you want project specific shared libraries like project A, project B, project C, and then each of the project will have um, multiple libraries, a build library, a library is basically a script, so just don't get confused. A build script, a deploy script, a validate script, a post deployment script. So whatever project specific, if you want, you can leverage source. And if you have something like a Kubernetes environment and you're talking about a lot of templating that you need, pod templates, helm templates, and stuff, you could leverage resources. But I'm not going to make this video super complex, showing all features, but getting you started to using the shared library features of Jenkins. So which means you are then interested only about vars. So under vars, you go ahead and uh, create all of your libraries or functions. So basically we call it as functions. Each stage, whatever it has to perform, the logic is packaged as a function, as a Groovy function, and then it is dropped under this repository under vars. So there is a build function, the deploy function, a validate the build output function, and then validate the deploy function. Right. This is to get you started with the structure of how you can place your shared libraries. Right. Now let's go to the configuration part. If I take a normal pipeline, let me take a simple demo. There should be, yeah, let's take this project, and it's a pretty simple pipeline that I have. A build, validate the build output, deploy the application, validate the deployment, and then finish the pipeline. If for this pipeline, I would have to write the Jenkins file, it would look something like this. So here, the simple Java web app is the repository for this pipeline. So if I come here, I would have two Jenkins file. One is the normal Jenkins file and one with the shared library Jenkins file, which I will show it to you in a minute or two. But Coming to the normal Jenkins file, the legacy way of writing, all of the stuff that the pipeline has to do is written for each stage. So build, I want you to execute the build script, validate the build output. Once the build script is run, I want you to cd into this folder and then check if the contents are available. Then run the deploy script. So pretty much it is straightforward. So all of the function that each of the stage needs to do is written in this file in itself, which means we are talking about 63 lines of code currently. If I run the pipeline, I don't have to, it is going to go and complete smooth. But the idea is to cut down on the huge lines of code of Jenkins file, and I don't want to keep writing the same Jenkins file for similar kinds of applications. So basically create the groovy functions and then be able to use it. For that, what I need to do is, let's first go to the Jenkins side. To set up this, you need a plugin on Jenkins called as Global Shared Library plugin. Now, let me go to Manage Jenkins and pull out the plugins. And in the plugins, let me click on Installed and then type Pipeline Groovy Libraries, which is this one. And if you go through the handbook, the documentation for this, it very clearly gives you the details of how you can extend or create the Jenkins shared libraries, and it will be pretty much talking about the same stuff that I just told you. How should the repository structure be like, what you can put on SRC, vars, and the resources, and how you have to configure the plugin. Um, I'm not going to let you read the document for now. I will already show you what configurations you need to do on the UI stuff. So once you install this plugin, just get to the systems. One step back. Let's go to system and scroll down. You should see something called as global trusted pipeline libraries. So there you see the global trusted pipeline library block, and it will ask you to give a name. This name is not the repository name, but you can also keep it as the repository name. So you need a dedicated repository where these shared libraries are going to sit. Uh, this name that it is talking is your repository could be anything, pipeline libs, but uh, to call this, to let the Jenkins file know that, hey, you need to call this repository, you could give any name. In this case, I just kept it um, similar to the repository name, which is pipeline libs, and then default version, in which version is the latest Groovy scripts stored, the shared library stored. It's a main branch, so I give that. Load implicitly is basically if you don't want to always specify in your Jenkins file, hey, pull the shared libraries from this repository, then you can give load implicitly. If you uncheck it, then you have to specifically give it on Jenkins file. I'll show you when I'm opening the Jenkins file and then showing you how it is written. But just keep in mind, if you uncheck it, you have to explicitly specify in the Jenkins file the location of the shared libs. Otherwise, if you check it, then you don't have to specify that location and it loads implicitly. But if you ask me for a recommendation, I would say this needs to be unchecked because you have better control. Tomorrow, you could work on multiple functions, new features, bug fix, which means you're not going to directly make the changes on where is it? So you're not going to make the changes directly on main branch. You are basically going to create bug fix branches or feature branches, and then you're going to do the modifications. You need to test it before pulling, merging back into main. And so if you use this method of unchecking, you could also specify, do you want to call the function from a main branch or a feature branch or a bug fix branch or whatever. So it gives you more control when you uncheck it. Just a good practice from my experience. Then pretty much straightforward, just like how we do the SCM setup. You need to give the repository URL, you need to give a credential for the Jenkins to be able to connect and pull the shared libraries from the pipeline libs repo. And then that's pretty much it. Once this is configured, then you are ready. All you now need is on your actual source code repository. This is the application source code repository. You need to create now a new Jenkins file instead of the old Jenkins file, which was 63 lines of code. Now we are going to see if we can optimize it, make it efficient. using this shared libs. Let me just open it, run through how it's written, and then I will show you how we have optimized. The very first step, as I said, needs to be a reference for on the Jenkins file to tell it, hey, all of the shared libraries are sitting under pipeline libs. And since we have configured all of the stuff in the plugin, it knows the moment we give pipeline libs, then it knows it is this repository, and then it needs to pull all the shared libraries from this folder. Then comes pretty much the same stuff. Let's jump into the stages, and there you see stage build and then the steps. I'm doing nothing. I'm only calling the shared library build app. So if I go to pipeline libs, I go to where's, and there should be a library called build app. You can forget the extension .groovy. So basically the function is called build app. I only call build app. And then for build app function to work, it needs an argument, which is build script. So build script and the path is here. So I just pass it as an argument to build app function. Similarly, the next stage is also validate build output. I just call the function. I give the argument that is needed for the function to work. Same with the deploy, and then I just give two arguments which is required for the script to function, and then finally validate deployment. And I'm only calling the library functions, and I'm not writing the actual content stuff that each stage needs to do. It is only calling the shared function from the repository, and so whatever is defined in the shared library will get executed. This way, from 63 lines of code, we are cutting it down to almost by, I would say, half or a little more than half. So from 63 to almost 39 lines of code is a huge jump. And let's talk in terms of 600 lines of code to 310, 320 lines of code. That is making your Jenkins file super, super efficient. Um, One thing I want to add is it's not uh, half is to half mapping. So if it's 600, it need not be 300 lines of code. It could even be even more shorter, crispier, efficient, because all of the stuff is written on the shared library, and the Jenkins file is only a placeholder to call the shared functions from the shared library repository. What are the advantages of doing it this way? One, keeping your Jenkins file short, crispier, and efficient to manage. Two, if there are similar applications, then the functions can be reused on different Jenkins files. You don't have to write the same Jenkins file for 10 different places, so they can be reused. Third, debugging. Because they are all in a centralized repository, if your build fails, then all of your 10 projects are going to fail, and you just need to fix the build script build function on one repository alone here, and then all 10 projects are going to be sorted. Instead, if the old way, you have to fix it for each other stage, copy paste for 10 different Jenkins files. Super tedious, manual effort, typos, error prone, so whatnot. And this is the um, industry standard way, efficient way, and more modernized way. Right. So now we have this. I would like to go ahead and execute the pipeline. Let's go ahead and is there anything else that I need to change? Yeah, you good point that I remembered. So just going to the configuration of this multi-branch pipeline, all I did was just one additional change. Instead of the default Jenkins file, the legacy Jenkins file, I am just pointing it to the new Jenkins file shared libs, and that is the only change I did here. So there should be a reference where I suggested, oops, not here, I'm sorry. Yep. So Jenkins file, and then the script path is basically I'm pointing it to the new Jenkins file. Save, main branch, build now, and hopefully there is a clean pipeline happening. And when it has deployed the application, I'd also want to quickly go to the localhost 8080 and then show if the application is deployed clean. Okay, the deployment product started. If I go here and hit enter, there you go. A simple um, a Java HTTP server. I just say my name Karthik, and it's going to print. You said Karthik. So the deployment happens clean, and after few seconds, the pipeline is also going to run clean. Maybe as a test, let's do something to validate if the whole thing is working. Now there is a improvement that you want to make, let's say to the shared functions. Let's say to the, let me think where, what's happening here. Okay. Okay, deploying the app. Let's change something. Deploying the app with shared lib function. Commit changes. I'm making some changes to the shared functions to see if it is picking up. And let's also do something. Let's come to the actual code and see if we can change something. Um, main. Okay, there should be an echo. All right, let's do it here. So I'm changing some source code. This is a simple web app, right? And commit. Now we have made changes to the actual code, source code, and also made changes to the shared pipeline libraries just so to prove that things are not static and it is really set up and you can see it working. So there should be a pipeline that should get started. It is going to deploy the application. The deployed application should have a different content on the web page, and the log should also show something different because the shared library is also updated. So pretty much everything is seamlessly connected well and working clean is something I want to show. Let's see what happens. Another deployment happens. Let's do a refresh. There you go. This is a simple web app. You can see the contents. And if I go to the logs, there should be a print message. Yeah, deploying the app with shared library function. So the latest library function is also pulled in. The source code is also updated. So everything works clean and it's pretty straightforward, which means this fix that we did, this improvement that we did would then hit across all of your pipelines that's been using these shared functions. There you go. That is something that I wanted to show. So I hope the video was helpful, informative, and this is something that you could try. And if you're already someone who's using Jenkins in your workplace, I would highly, highly recommend please use the shared library function feature. It's super handy, super helpful, and it will definitely improve your DevOps work quality. Thank you so much. Then see you all in another video. Take care. Have fun. Bye-bye.